Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're taking a look at something I think we all know is important: mental resilience in a crisis.
Oh, absolutely.
We've got psychology articles, survival guides, personal accounts. We even pulled in some military training insights.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so our mission today is to sort of, to equip you with the tools and mental habits you need both during an emergency and beforehand, to sort of fortify your mind.
Well, I think that's a great mission. It's interesting how much focus there is on physical survival skills, but mental strength is just as important.
You're so right. And the stakes are super high. One study actually found that only 10% of people, only 10% naturally stay calm when things get really rough.
Oh, wow.
So how do we make sure we're in that 10%?
Well, that's where understanding survival psychology comes in. One of the sources you gave me, an article in Outdoor Life, talked about Dr. John Leach and his the 10-80-10 rule.
10-80-10.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that one?
Actually, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, it breaks down how people react in emergencies. The 10% stay calm, 80% freeze, and then the remaining 10% completely panic.
Wow. So most people aren't like action heroes when things get rough.
No, not at all.
Is that where the what is it, the amygdala comes in? I always mess that up.
Yeah, the amygdala.
The brain's fear center.
Yeah. The amygdala, it's like an alarm system in your brain. And in a crisis, it can trigger that fight or flight response, which floods your system with adrenaline. And that makes it really hard to think clearly.
Yeah, you just your brain just shuts down.
Right. It feels like it. Like your brain is offline, even if you know what to do.
Yeah. So let's say the worst happens. That panic starts to set in. What are some things that someone can do right away, like immediately to regain control?
Fortunately, there are some things, some pretty simple but very effective tactics. Like, have you heard of the STOP technique?
I think I have. It's the breathing, right?
It is. It stands for stop, take a breath, observe, and then proceed. And, panic often feels like a runaway train. Your thoughts are racing. You can't focus. So this is like hitting the brakes.
Okay.
Just that pause to focus on your breath can be enough to interrupt the spiral so you can start to think clearly again.
Okay, so simple but powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there other ones like that?
Right. Are there other quick ones like that?
Yeah. There's also the TIPP technique, which actually uses your body's physiology to help you calm down.
Ah, interesting.
And this one's really cool. It actually counteracts the stress response directly.
So it's more like physical than mental.
Exactly. So TIPP, that stands for temperature, intense exercise, paced breathing, and then paired muscle relaxation.
Okay.
So for temperature, you can splash cold water on your face. That can quickly lower your heart rate.
Okay.
For intense exercise, even just a really short burst of activity can burn off some of that adrenaline.
Oh, I see.
And then paced breathing, that helps to calm down your nervous system, along with the paired muscle relaxation.
So you're kind of tricking your body into thinking the danger is past.
Exactly. You're using these physiological tricks to kind of force that calming down.
That's really interesting. So we've stopped the panic. We've calmed down a bit. How do we start getting our heads back in the game?
Well, one of the things that comes up in survival psychology all the time, and this is even in military training, is positive self-talk.
Oh, yeah. So instead of thinking, oh no, I'm doomed, you're thinking, I can handle this.
Right, because that internal dialogue we have with ourselves, that can either help us or really hinder us in a crisis. And even simple phrases like, I've got this, or focus on the next step, they can make a big difference.
This makes me think of that story about the mountain climber. Joe Simpson, was it?
Yes.
He crawled out of a crevasse by setting small goals.
Yes. Yeah. Touching the void. That's it. He broke his leg. He was trapped. And he managed to survive by just focusing on the next 20 minutes of crawling.
Wow.
It's a really incredible testament to how breaking down a huge problem into those smaller chunks can keep you from feeling totally paralyzed.
Right. Those small wins. But, I'm thinking true mental resilience, the ability to weather anything. That's more than just quick thinking, isn't it? It's like a muscle you have to train.
Exactly. It really is like building mental muscle. Just like physical exercise strengthens your body, there are mental practices that can strengthen your mind's ability to handle stress and adversity.
So where do we start with this mental fitness routine? Mindfulness and meditation.
Right.
That's what everyone seems to be talking about these days. But what's the big deal?
Well, it's not just hype. Regular mindfulness practice can actually change your brain. It makes you more focused, less reactive to stress, and better able to regulate your emotions. It's like building that attentional control muscle so you can choose where you focus your attention instead of letting your mind get, hijacked by worries and anxiety.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've tried meditation, and I have to say my mind just wanders all over the place. Any tips for making it actually work?
It definitely takes practice, but even just a few minutes every day, that can make a difference. Try to approach it with a sense of curiosity instead of judgment.
Oh, okay.
When those thoughts come up, and they will just acknowledge them and then redirect your attention back to your breath. You're not trying to stop thoughts altogether, but you're trying to learn to just observe them without getting swept away.
I can see how that would be helpful for meditation, but also just dealing with anything stressful in life.
Yes.
So what other mental habits can we work on?
Well, another technique, and this one comes from that Chris de Servi source, is called cognitive reframing. And it's all about learning to challenge those negative thoughts and finding a different way to look at a situation.
So it's like positive self-talk, but with a more analytical, approach.
Exactly. So instead of just replacing a negative thought with a positive one, you dig a little deeper and you ask, is there another way to interpret this?
Oh, okay.
For example, you're stuck in a traffic jam. You could easily get frustrated and angry. You're thinking, this is awful. I'm going to be late. My whole day is ruined.
Yeah.
But with cognitive reframing, you might ask yourself, okay, so this isn't ideal, but can I use this time productively? Maybe I can listen to that podcast I've been meaning to catch up on, or I can practice some deep breathing exercises. You're choosing how to respond, even though you can't control the traffic.
That's a good way to put it. So finding the silver lining, or at least just acknowledging it, might not be as bad as it seems.
Yeah. You're not denying the reality, but you're choosing to focus on what you can control. Your thoughts, your attitude, and your response.
That's a really good point. So we're training our minds to be more mindful, to reframe our thinking. And wasn't there something about scenario visualization in the sources? I think, wasn't that a big part of the Navy SEAL training?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a powerful technique because it lets you mentally rehearse for those challenging situations before they actually happen. So it's like a mental dry run. And so that way, if you encounter something similar in real life, you're less likely to be totally caught off guard.
So we're talking about, mentally going through a worst case scenario like a house fire.
Yeah.
Just visualizing, staying calm, and taking the right steps.
Right. It might feel a little strange at first, but our brains actually process imagined experiences in a very similar way to real ones.
Okay.
So by mentally preparing yourself, you're essentially giving yourself a head start. You're familiarizing yourself with the potential challenges and practicing your desired response.
That makes sense. Especially valuable for people who tend to freeze under pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like giving your brain a set of instructions to follow, even when things get chaotic.
Exactly. And these mental habits, they all work together. Mindfulness helps you stay present and focused. Reframing helps you see things from a different perspective. And visualization helps you prepare for the potential challenges.
So it's like a whole toolkit.
Yeah, it's like a mental toolkit.
For dealing with stress and uncertainty. But I want to shift gears for a second and talk about the bigger picture. Our overall lifestyle, the everyday stuff. How does that impact our mental resilience?
That's a really great question. We can't underestimate the importance of the foundational habits, things like sleep, exercise, and social connection.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just good for physical health, they're essential for building a strong, resilient mind.
You're not going to tell me to take ice cold showers, are you?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Although cold showers can be a good way to challenge yourself and build up that tolerance for discomfort. But more importantly, it's about recognizing the mind-body connection. When you're sleep deprived or you haven't been exercising, you're more vulnerable to stress and negativity. It's harder to access those mental resources we've been talking about.
I know that's true for me, for sure.
Yeah.
When I'm exhausted or haven't worked out in a while, even small things kind of set me off.
Yeah, it's harder to stay calm. Exercise, for example, it doesn't just make you physically stronger, it builds your mental toughness, too.
Right.
Every time you push yourself physically, you're proving to yourself that you can handle discomfort and come out stronger.
That's a good point. What about social connection? It's interesting we're talking about, resilience during crises. But sometimes prepping for those crises can actually make people less connected. I'm remembering that Canadian survey.
Yes.
In 2023.
That one from the Genwell Knowledge Hub. I think it found that something like 40% of Canadians felt more isolated from their communities because of fears around emergencies.
Yeah. So it's a paradox.
It is, a bit.
You want to prep for those crises, but it makes you less connected to people. So building those strong social connections, having people you can rely on, having people who have your back, that's actually a crucial part of preparing for a crisis.
It really is. Those relationships provide a sense of belonging, purpose, and support. And those are all essential for maintaining hope and motivation, especially during prolonged, difficult times.
Okay, so we're building healthy habits, nurturing those vital relationships. Anything else we can do proactively to prepare our minds for a crisis?
Well, that's where preventative measures come in. It's about taking those intentional steps to build your mental toughness before you're truly tested.
I like that.
It's like getting a mental flu shot.
Okay, I like that. So being proactive rather than reactive. What are some examples of these mental flu shots?
Well, one technique that's often used in military training is called stress inoculation training. And the idea is to gradually expose yourself to manageable amounts of stress, sort of like building up an immunity.
Oh, so like those ice cold showers.
That could be one. But it doesn't have to be that extreme. Maybe it's pushing yourself to go for a challenging hike. Or if public speaking terrifies you, sign up for a public speaking class. The point is to intentionally put yourself in situations that make you a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
And practice those coping mechanisms and build your confidence.
It seems counterintuitive, intentionally seeking out stress.
Yeah.
But I see the logic. It's kind of like exposure therapy.
Exactly. You're expanding your comfort zone and proving to yourself that you can handle discomfort. And the more you do this, the less likely you are to be completely overwhelmed when those unexpected challenges come up.
Okay, yeah. This brings us back to social connections. How do those fit in with this idea of preventative measures?
Well, knowing who you can rely on during an emergency and having those conversations beforehand can make a huge difference. Like, imagine a big storm knocks out the power. If you've already established a check-in pact with a friend, or you know who to reach out to for help, you're not facing it alone. And that can just dramatically reduce your stress level.
It's like having a mental safety net.
Exactly. And don't forget that seeking professional help, whether it's therapy or counseling, is a powerful way to build those personalized coping skills and strategies for managing stress and anxiety.
Yeah, it's so important to normalize asking for help, especially when it comes to mental health. There's no shame in building that resilience with the help of an expert. So we've covered a lot today. Short-term tactics, long-term habits, even preventative measures. If there was one big takeaway, one guiding principle for building mental resilience, what would it be?
Well, there's this one concept that I really like, and it also happens to be a great story, called the Stockdale Paradox. Have you heard of it?
I think I have. Okay.
Remind me.
Well, it's named after Admiral Jim Stockdale. He was a prisoner of war during the Vietnam War, and he survived years of brutal captivity. And he said that the people who didn't make it were the optimists. The ones who were so sure that they'd be home by Christmas and then by Easter and then by the next holiday, and they kept getting their hopes up, and when those dates came and went, they lost all hope. Oh, so it's about being realistic, not sugarcoating things.
That's part of it. But here's the paradox. Stockdale also said the survivors were those who never lost faith in the ultimate outcome, that they would eventually prevail.
Oh.
So it's about balancing a realistic assessment of your current circumstances with an unwavering faith in your ability to overcome them.
I love that. So it's like saying, this is hard, but I'll get through it.
Exactly. It's that grit, that refusal to give up that can really make all the difference.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the importance of building mental resilience, and we've explored some of the key techniques and habits that can help us do just that. From the power of positive self-talk to the importance of cognitive reframing and scenario visualization, there are so many tools at our disposal. But I think one of the most important takeaways from today's discussion is that mental resilience is not something that happens overnight. It's a muscle that we need to train consistently, just like we would train our physical bodies. And that's where those everyday habits come in. Getting enough sleep, making time for exercise, and nurturing those vital social connections. These things may seem small, but they play a huge role in our overall well-being and our ability to handle stress. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure where to start, remember that even small changes can make a big difference. Try incorporating just one new habit into your routine this week. Maybe it's 5 minutes of mindfulness meditation each morning, or a quick walk in nature during your lunch break. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are so many resources available to support you on your journey. From online communities to therapy and counseling, there's no shame in seeking help when you need it. The most important thing is to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, we've got one more incredibly powerful technique to share with you, one that you can use anytime, anywhere to toughen your nerves and sharpen your focus.
We're going to talk about box breathing.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve into the world of box breathing and explore even more practical tips for building unshakable mental resilience.
So, box breathing, it's a technique used by, well, Navy SEALs use it to calm their nerves and sharpen their focus. And it's surprisingly simple, you know? You can do it anywhere, anytime, and you don't need any special equipment.
Okay, I'm all about simple and effective.
Right.
So how does it work?
So, you inhale slowly for a count of 4, hold your breath for 4, exhale slowly for 4, and then hold your lungs empty for 4.
Okay.
And then you just repeat.
That sounds very zen.
It is. It's like you're drawing a box with your breath.
Okay, I can see how that would be really grounding. Why is it so effective?
Well, it works because it helps regulate your breathing and your heart rate, which then calms down your nervous system. And the best part is you can practice it during your everyday life. So when you're feeling stressed at work or stuck in traffic, or you just need a moment of calm, try box breathing. That way, if you're ever in a real crisis, it'll be, second nature.
That's a great tip. I like that. A portable, always available tool for calming down. We should all be practicing this.
Right.
Are there any other resources you recommend for people who want to learn more about mental resilience?
Absolutely. We talked about Dr. John Leach earlier and his blog, The Psychology of Survival. It's like a treasure trove of information. He's got great articles on how our minds work in emergencies and just tons of practical tips.
That sounds right up our alley.
It is.
We'll definitely include a link to that in the show notes. What about more general resources?
Well, ready.gov and the Red Cross website, those are always good places to start. They have a lot of information on emergency preparedness, including the mental and emotional aspects,
right,
which is, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think, reading about other people's experiences in survival situations, that can also be helpful.
Yeah.
It helps kind of demystify the unknown and makes those what if scenarios feel less, scary.
Right. It's like studying for a test. The more you know about the potential challenges, the better prepared you'll be.
Well, I think we've given everyone listening a lot to think about today, and hopefully a lot to feel empowered by. Any final words of wisdom before we wrap things up?
I think for me, it always comes back to that quote from Christa Servi. A prepared mind is the ultimate shelter in any crisis.
That's such a powerful statement. It really highlights how crucial mental resilience is. Just as important as any of the physical preparations we might make.
Exactly, because a calm and focused mind, that's your greatest asset in any situation.
So to everyone listening, start building that mental resilience today. Practice those techniques, cultivate healthy habits, and remember, you're stronger than you think.
That's so true.
This has been a great deep dive. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, stay curious and stay resilient. Okay, so we've covered a lot of techniques.
Yeah.
A lot of mental habits to cultivate.
Right.
But how do we take all this knowledge and actually put it into practice? I mean, it can feel kind of overwhelming, right?
You're absolutely right. It can. We need practical tools that we can use, every day. And one technique that I find really helpful is called box breathing.
Box breathing. That sounds kind of interesting. What's the story behind it? How does it work?
Well, it's a technique that Navy SEALs use to, calm their nerves and sharpen their focus. And it's really simple. You can do it any time. You don't need any special equipment or anything.
Keep it simple. I like it.
Exactly.
Right.
So you inhale slowly for a count of 4.
Okay.
Hold your breath for 4, exhale slowly for 4, and then hold your lungs empty for 4. And then you just repeat that.
So it's like you're drawing a box.
Yeah, it's like you're drawing a box with your breath.
I like that. That's a good visual. So why is it so effective though?
Well, it regulates your breathing and your heart rate. And that calms your nervous system down.
Okay.
And the best part is that you can practice this, during your regular days. So when you're feeling stressed out at work or you're, stuck in traffic or you just need to chill out for a minute, you can try box breathing. And then that way, if you're ever in a real crisis situation, it'll be second nature to you.
Yeah, it'll just kick in. I like that. A portable, always available tool for calming down.
Yeah.
We should all be practicing this. Are there any other resources websites, books, anything you recommend for somebody who wants to learn more about all this?
Yeah, so we talked about Dr. John Leach and his blog, The Psychology of Survival. It's like a gold mine of information. He's got these really great articles about how our minds work in emergencies and, just practical advice and tips.
We will definitely link to that in the show notes for sure.
Yes, do that. And then, for more general resources, ready.gov and the Red Cross website are really good. Lots of information on emergency preparedness, including the, mental and emotional parts of it.
Absolutely. What else I think can be really helpful is reading other people's stories.
Oh, yeah.
About survival. Like, reading about how other people have coped in crisis situations.
Yeah. It makes it feel more real.
Yeah.
And less scary.
Right, because it demystifies it in a way. It's like, okay, someone else has gone through this and they made it. So,
You can too.
Yeah. It's almost like studying for a test. The more you know about the potential challenges, the better prepared you are. Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today, and hopefully a lot to feel empowered by. Any final words of wisdom before we wrap things up?
Yeah, that quote that we mentioned from Crisis Survey, a prepared mind is the ultimate shelter in any crisis.
Yeah.
I think that really says it all.
It's so true. It really highlights the importance of mental resilience, It's just as crucial as any of the physical preparations we might make.
Absolutely, because a calm, focused mind is your greatest asset, no matter what the situation is.
That's so true. So to everyone listening, start building that mental resilience today. Practice these techniques, cultivate those healthy habits, and just remember, you are stronger than you think.
You really are.
Well, this has been another great deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Until next time, stay curious and stay resilient.